Have you ever wondered how a single whisper can unravel years of friendship, leaving you questioning every shadowed glance and secretive smile? Tonight, you trudge through the winding corridors of the wizarding world, the air thick with the scent of old parchment and flickering candle wax, feeling a chill that seeps into your bones, not from the cold, but from the rumors of treachery that cling like a second skin. It's the kind of night where portraits murmur warnings you'd rather ignore, and the soft clatter of rats across the stone floors sounds almost like a coded language only the wary can decipher. You probably won't survive this unscathed, not because of curses or spells, but because knowing the truth about those closest to you can be more terrifying than any dark magic. In the midst of it all, a small, rat-like figure scuttles unseen, its beady eyes glinting with secrets that could topple heroes, hinting at betrayals that will echo far beyond these halls. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Each shadowed nook seems alive, as if Hogwarts itself is holding its breath, waiting for the moment the quietest among us decides to step into the storm. I'm really curious, from which part of the world are you watching this video? Write your country in the comments. Let's see how far this little story has traveled. You feel the weight of centuries pressing down as whispered conversations flit like restless ghosts along the corridors. And somewhere in that darkness, Peter Pettigrew moves silently, weaving a web that will test loyalty, courage, and the fragile boundary between hero and villain. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Peter Pettigrew, the unassuming shadow among friends, glides through the quiet corners of the wizarding world with a grace that belies his intentions. And you can't help but notice how easily someone so small and timid can carry secrets that might shake entire families and kingdoms. The kitchens smell faintly of roasted pumpkin and old magic, while the stone walls seem to hum with the echoes of footsteps long gone, reminding you that history often lingers in the most ordinary of places. You follow him silently, your senses tuned to the faintest rustle of robes or the softest scurry of paws, realizing that loyalty and treachery can sometimes wear the same face, and that knowing the difference takes a courage most never summon. As Pettigrew slips past enchanted suits of armor and the whispering paintings that line the hallways, you observe how the mundane can mask extraordinary danger, from a flickering candle hiding a truth to a rat's twitching whiskers hinting at betrayal. The air feels heavier, charged with anticipation, and every shadow seems to stretch longer, as if conspiring with the small, anxious figure in front of you. You notice subtle quirks, a nervous glance, a lingering pause near a doorway, that betray his inner turmoil, and wonder how often the world overlooks the quiet, the meek, and the seemingly harmless, only to regret it later. Historians might debate whether Pettigrew's actions were inevitable or a choice born of circumstance, and fringe tales whisper of magical contracts and hidden debts that could have influenced his path. But the truth remains tantalizingly elusive. Walking in his footsteps, you sense the tension between past friendship and present deception, understanding that the line between hero and traitor is thinner than a hair in moonlight. Every creak of the floorboards, every flicker of torchlight reminds you that this journey is just beginning, and that even the smallest paw print can leave a legacy of consequence far beyond what you might imagine. The night Peter Pettigrew makes his pivotal move begins with a tension that coils around you like a living thing, each heartbeat echoing through the cold stone corridors, as though the castle itself holds its breath, aware of the history about to be rewritten. You trudge silently behind him, the faint smell of damp earth and scorched parchment mingling in the air, and every flickering torch casts long, quivering shadows that make familiar halls seem alien and treacherous. The spark of betrayal is small at first, a glance too long at a locked door, a whispered word muttered under his breath, but it grows with each step, feeding on Pettigrew's fear, ambition, and the quiet hunger to survive at any cost. You notice the tiny details, the little quirks of his manner, a nervous twitch in his fingers, the way his eyes dart toward every crevice as if expecting both discovery and temptation to spring from the very walls themselves. Meanwhile, the portraits along the hallways murmur warnings, their painted eyes following, silently judging, occasionally hinting at obscure wizarding customs that dictate loyalty in ways muggles could scarcely comprehend. Fringed tales suggest that rats who serve as familiars may carry echoes of their master's sins, an oddity few historians take seriously. Yet tonight you almost believe it, seeing Pettigrew's shadow flicker unnaturally across the stones, as if guided by some unseen moral force. Scholarly debate persists over whether prophecy or circumstance pushes a person to betrayal. And as you follow him, each decision he makes feels both inevitable and shocking, leaving you suspended between understanding and horror. The air grows colder as you approach the chamber where destiny hangs poised like a dagger. The faint scent of burnt herbs warning you that magical protection is at play, and you feel a shiver run down your spine as Pettigrew hesitates only a moment before stepping into a fate that will stain his name forever. You realize that betrayal is never a single act. It is a web woven over years, with threads of fear, envy, and opportunity stretching invisibly through every choice. And tonight, you are witness to the moment that the tiniest spark will ignite a conflagration whose echoes reach far beyond the castle walls. The whispers that once skated along the edges of your awareness now sharpen into warnings, curling through the halls like smoke from a long-forgotten fire, and you feel the weight of inevitability pressing against your chest as Peter Pettigrew moves with a deftness that belies his inner turmoil. Each step he takes is mirrored by the flickering of torches, the quivering shadows elongating and twisting across the stone floors, as if the castle itself conspires to reveal secrets long buried. You notice the subtle signs, an unlatched door, a faint scuff in the dust, the way a suit of armor tilts slightly as he passes, small magical cues that signal the delicate tension between loyalty and self-preservation. Scholars debate whether Pettigrew's betrayal was the result of innate weakness or the pressure of circumstance, while fringe tales whisper that enchanted rats have the uncanny ability to sense moral failings in their human counterparts, a claim you can't help but consider as his small form slips through secret passages. The air is thick with the scent of aged wood and ink, the faint hum of protective charms buzzing softly under your skin. And you feel the thrill of danger mingling with a creeping anxiety that you too might be caught in the web of choices yet unmade. As Pettigrew glances over his shoulder, the portraits mutter cryptic admonitions, their voices barely audible but sharp enough to make you startle, reminding you that history often remembers the smallest transgressions while ignoring the complexities that led to them. In the corner of your vision, a shadow moves independently of any light source, a trick of magic or perhaps a hint of the darker forces that have always lingered in the margins of wizarding life. Each whispered warning, each subtle signposts the unsteady ground of trust and deceit, and you sense that the threads of fate are tightening, pulling Pettigrew and yourself inexorably toward a moment whose consequences will ripple far beyond the corridors of Hogwarts. The tension in the air is palpable, like static before a storm. And as you follow him, you recognize that even the smallest act, a tremor of fear, a flick of a wand, a soft, unseen glance, can alter the course of history in ways both mundane and magically profound. The hidden passageway beneath Hogwarts unfolds before you like a secret vein pulsing with magic, its damp stone walls slick with moisture, and the faint smell of earth and candle wax mingling in a way that sets your senses on edge, reminding you that what seems mundane above ground often masks extraordinary danger below. You trudge carefully behind Peter Pettigrew, each step echoing softly, his small, furtive movements betraying the weight of the choices he has made, and you realize that loyalty, fear, and ambition intermingle here in ways that no ordinary map can chart. The air is alive with enchantments older than most of the portraits lining the upper halls. Faint protective charms hum beneath your fingertips, as if warning you to tread lightly, while Pettigrew slips past hidden doors and forgotten alcoves, glancing back only once, eyes wide with anxiety. Scholars have long debated whether the act of betrayal is a result of innate moral failure or the cumulative pressure of circumstance. And here, in this labyrinth of shadows, you begin to feel the truth of that debate in your own chest, each heartbeat hammering in time with the silent rhythm of the passage. Fringe tales speak of magical conduits in Hogwarts that respond to treachery, glowing faintly when a soul strays from its path, and you swear the stones themselves pulse ever so subtly as Pettigrew passes, the faintest shimmer of light tracing his footprints. The passage twists and turns with such labyrinthine precision that even the bravest auror would hesitate. And you notice how Peter's familiarity with its bends and dead ends gives him an eerie advantage, a confidence born from secret knowledge that is as dangerous as it is fragile. Small details emerge, a patch of moss untouched by light, a faded symbol etched into the wall centuries ago, a forgotten skeleton of some magical creature long past, reminding you that history persists in overlooked places, quietly observing, recording, and occasionally influencing the present. The faint sound of dripping water echoes from somewhere unseen, each drop punctuating the tension like a metronome keeping time with the slow, deliberate unfolding of Pettigrew's betrayal. You feel the air thicken, charged with unseen magic that seems to coil around every corner, making each step heavier, each breath more conscious, and you recognize the intricate interplay of risk and cunning that defines a traitor's journey. The necessity of stealth, the gamble of observation, the constant vigilance against discovery. Through it all, Pettigrew's small form moves with a blend of desperation and determination, and you begin to understand how a single individual, seemingly insignificant, can alter the course of events, leaving ripples that extend far beyond these hidden corridors. By the time you reach the chamber that marks the passage's end, the air feels electric, the walls humming softly, almost as if Hogwarts itself is alerting you to the consequences that await. Every step you've taken, every flicker of torchlight, every shadow that danced along these walls has prepared you for the revelation that awaits. A moment where loyalty, fear, and opportunity collide in a decision that will echo across time, affecting both wizarding and muggle worlds in ways scholars will debate for centuries. You sense the weight of legacy pressing down, a palpable presence that fills the space with anticipation and dread. And as Pettigrew pauses at the threshold, you realize that the hidden passageway has been more than a route. it has been a crucible, refining fear, desire, and cunning into a choice whose magnitude only now becomes apparent. And you feel, with a mix of awe and horror, that history itself leans forward to witness what happens next. Caught between the world he once knew and the dark allure of survival, Peter Pettigrew moves with a nervous precision that makes you keenly aware of how fragile the line between loyalty and self-preservation truly is. The corridors twist around you both, each turn an alcove imbued with centuries of spells and enchantments, their faint hum pressing against your consciousness, like a subtle reminder that magic records even the smallest intentions. You notice the way his fingers twitch, a slight hitch in his breath, and the nervous glances over his shoulder, each movement betraying a tension that you cannot ignore, a delicate balance between fear, cunning, and the faintest flicker of conscience. In the dim light, the shadows cast by flickering torches seem almost alive, curling along the stone walls and wrapping around Pettigrew's small form like silent witnesses to a moral struggle few dare to understand. Historians debate whether Pettigrew's choices were inevitable consequences of personality or circumstance. Yet here, in this tension-filled labyrinth, the distinction seems both irrelevant and impossible to discern, as if fate itself conspires to test the strength of character and the will to survive. Fringe accounts tell of enchanted rats serving as mirrors to their master's inner conflict, their tiny senses attuned to the faintest tremors of guilt or desire. And as you follow Pettigrew, you cannot help but notice his pet rat's subtle movements, the almost imperceptible twitch of whiskers and ears that seem to mirror the unspoken battle within. The scent of damp stone and old parchment mixes with the faint residue of protective charms, a sensory overlay that heightens awareness and forces each decision into sharp relief, making you realize how even mundane choices, pausing too long, stepping too loudly, glancing at the wrong painting, can carry consequences of far-reaching impact. Every turn in the passage seems to amplify the quiet tension, the soft hum of magic pulsing through the walls, reminding you that Hogwarts itself is a sentient observer, recording deeds, intentions, and the subtle vibrations of fear and courage alike. You watch as Pettigrew hesitates, caught between memories of friendship, obligations to darker forces, and a desperate desire for survival, and you feel the pull of history pressing against every step, as though centuries of precedent, tales of betrayals past, and warnings unheeded are all converging in this one moment. The faint scratching of a quill from an unseen scriptorium seems to accompany your thoughts, a reminder that magical historians often debate the smallest details, arguing over which spells truly protected the innocent and which merely obscured treachery. As you move closer, the air thickens with the weight of anticipation, each heartbeat echoing against stone like a drum marking a countdown. And you recognize that Pettigrew's choices are not merely personal. They ripple outward, affecting lives, loyalties, and even the subtle balance between light and dark in a world where one betrayal can tilt the scales for generations. The tension is nearly unbearable as you witness him pause at a crossway, considering the paths before him, each fraught with risk and consequence. And in that moment, you understand that the stakes are not just survival, but the legacy of trust and deception that will define the wizarding world for years to come. Every step he takes from this point onward is a negotiation with fate, each decision a silent argument with history, and you feel the profound weight of watching a life teeter between heroism and infamy. as the quiet, desperate struggle within Pettigrew's heart becomes a reflection of the complex, often contradictory nature of human and magical morality itself. The moment of choice stretches before Peter Pettigrew like a taut wire, thin yet unyielding, and you trudge behind him, every step a careful negotiation with the tension that fills the passageway. The shadows crawling along the walls as if they too are waiting for the verdict that will mark this night forever. The air is heavy with the mingled scents of old stone, damp moss, and faint traces of protective magic, which buzzes softly under your skin like a low, omnipresent hum. A reminder that Hogwarts itself is more than architecture. It is a sentient witness, silently recording every heartbeat, every breath, every indecisive twitch of Pettigrew's fingers. You notice the minute details, almost absurd in their specificity, that reveal the precariousness of his inner struggle. The quick flicker of a rat's tail brushing against a discarded broomstick. The tiny nervous glimmer in Pettigrew's eyes as he hesitates by a faintly glowing sigil etched into the stone floor. The almost imperceptible shiver that runs through his shoulders, betraying the fear he masks behind a veneer of composure. Scholars and magical historians alike debate whether betrayal is the inevitable result of character or circumstance, a philosophical question that hangs in the damp air as heavily as the scent of candle smoke. And you sense that tonight, you are watching both arguments unfold in real time, the personal and the historical converging in a single decisive moment. Fringe lore suggests that rats attuned to human magic can sense the subtle shift of moral balance. And as you observe Pettigrew, you notice his familiar scabbers twitching unnaturally, whiskers quivering in a silent commentary on the gravity of what is about to happen. Each flicker of torchlight seems to accentuate the stakes, casting long, jagged shadows that twist like spectral fingers. And you realize that the castle itself conspires to reflect the tension of this instant, amplifying the choices, the fear, and the moral calculus that Pettigrew must navigate. The walls close in as you follow him deeper into a chamber that smells faintly of burnt parchment and lingering charms. The space so tight that every movement becomes amplified, every rustle of robes or scuff of shoes conspicuous. You feel the weight of history pressing in, centuries of wizarding life, of battles fought and alliances broken, seem to hum in the stone around you, resonating with Pettigrew's own inner conflict. He pauses, eyes darting between doors and secret alcoves, as if seeking a path that will absolve him, or at least mitigate the consequences of the choice he knows he must make. His tiny, jittery form is juxtaposed against the grandeur of the hidden chamber, the silent power of spells inscribed long ago, pressing down on every decision, reminding you that magic, like morality, rarely offers a clean path. You notice subtle absurdities that almost make you smirk despite the tension. A broom leaning improbably against a wall, an enchanted quill scratching notes in the absence of a writer, the faint glimmer of a rat-sized cloak fluttering in Scabber's wake. Small comedic flourishes that make the night feel uncannily alive, an amalgamation of danger and whimsy. The juxtaposition of humor and dread reminds you that even in moments of grave consequence, life and magic rarely adheres to solemnity alone. Time seems to stretch and compress simultaneously. Each second feels like an hour, each heartbeat like a drum announcing the passage from choice to consequence. You can sense Pettigrew's hesitation as a physical presence, the tension radiating outward, brushing against your own senses, forcing you to measure each breath, each step. There is an almost imperceptible vibration in the stones beneath your feet, a reminder of the ancient protective charms that line the passage and chamber, a subtle magic that reacts to intent. as if the building itself disapproves of the betrayal that hangs on the cusp of realization. Fringe theories in magical ethics suggest that certain places in Hogwarts may amplify moral dilemmas, that the very architecture can exert pressure on the conscience. And standing here watching Pettigrew weigh his options, you cannot entirely dismiss the notion. Every instinct you have tells you that what occurs in the next moments will echo far beyond these walls, that the seemingly insignificant decisions, the timing of a step, the glance to the left or right, the choice to speak or remain silent, will ripple through history, affecting not only those present, but the very fabric of the wizarding world for decades. He finally moves, a deliberate step that carries both resolve and desperation, and you feel the chamber's magic react subtly. The faint hum intensifies, shadows quiver, and Scabbers' whiskers twitch like a metronome, marking the rhythm of impending betrayal. Peter's eyes, wide and restless, flick toward the distant door leading to the outer world, a pathway that offers safety, yet demands an act of irreparable treachery to traverse. You notice the almost imperceptible tremor in his hands as he reaches for the magical device he carries, the object that will seal his fate and set in motion the events that history will remember with a mixture of horror and fascination. The tension is palpable, a tangible weight pressing against your chest, and you realize with a mixture of awe and unease that the gravity of this instant is heightened not only by what Pettigrew does, but by the very anticipation of choice, the interplay between fear, desire, and moral hesitation that defines the act of betrayal. Small magical details punctuate the moment. A faint spark from a miscast charm illuminates a distant corner of the chamber, revealing a portrait that seems to gaze knowingly at Pettigrew. The whispered hum of protective enchantments seems to form a rhythm, a silent soundtrack to the drama unfolding. And the scurrying of Scabbers across the cold stone floor creates a counterpoint to the human tension, a reminder that even the smallest creatures play roles in events that shape history. You notice a faint scent of burnt herbs lingering in the air, a residue from spells cast centuries ago for protection and secrecy, which mingles with the earthy smell of damp stone, creating a sensory landscape that is both oppressive and strangely vivid, anchoring you in this decisive moment. As Pettigrew's hand closes around the device, you sense a convergence of timelines, the weight of past friendships, the specter of forgotten promises, and the looming consequences of dark alliances coalesce into a singular, electric instant. You are acutely aware that the choice he is about to make will define not only his life, but the lives of countless others, and that history itself hangs on the balance of this one tremulous moment. Every heartbeat, every whisper, every flicker of candlelight amplifies the drama, and you feel a shiver of recognition. The betrayal is rarely clean, rarely simple. It is an entanglement of fear, hope, ambition, and circumstance. And tonight, you are witness to the full, agonizing complexity of that truth. When the act is finally set into motion, the air seems to thrum with the energy of consequence, a subtle vibration that travels through the stone, the walls, and the very atmosphere, signaling that the die has been cast. You sense the echoes of choice radiating outward, touching unseen corners of the wizarding world. And as Pettigrew's small, fateful movements conclude, you feel the full weight of moral ambiguity pressing in. The act is both inevitable and horrifying, mundane in its execution, yet epic in its repercussions. Scholarly debates will persist for centuries over whether his betrayal was the product of cowardice, cunning, necessity, or some intricate interplay of all three, and fringe magical lore will offer endless theories about how his rat form might have influenced or even foretold the outcome. Yet standing here in this charged chamber, you understand in a visceral way that history is not made in broad, sweeping gestures alone. It is shaped in quiet, trembling choices, in the faintest gestures of conscience and fear, in the silent calculations of those who navigate the narrow margins between right and wrong. As the immediate moment fades, leaving a palpable hush in its wake, you can feel the tension lingering in the air like an afterimage, a reminder that choices resonate far beyond their immediate context, and that even the smallest betrayal has consequences that ripple through time. The hum of protective enchantments fades slowly, shadows settle into their familiar patterns, and the faint, nervous twitch of Scabbers' tail serves as a quiet punctuation to the moral drama you have just witnessed. You realize that witnessing this moment has altered you as well, that observing the collision of fear, ambition, and choice leaves an imprint not easily erased, and that the echoes of Peter Pettigrew's decision will continue to reverberate long after you leave these corridors. Every sensory detail, the scents, the sounds, the shifting shadows, remains vivid in your memory, a testament to the complexity of moral choice and the fragility of trust in a world alive with both magic and history. The aftermath of Peter Pettigrew's betrayal unfolds with a slow, almost surgical precision, and you trudge behind him through the corridors of Hogwarts, noting how every shadow seems to shift in response to his choices. Every whispering portrait leaning closer as if eager to witness the consequences firsthand. The air is thick with residual magic, a faint tingle crawling along your skin, as though the castle itself is processing the shockwaves of treachery, and you feel a creeping weight, the kind that presses on your chest and makes each breath seem both necessary and burdensome. You notice small, absurd details that provide almost comic relief amidst the tension. A disheveled broom leaning precariously against a wall, a stray parchment fluttering as if caught in an invisible breeze, a faint squeak from a hidden mouse that scurries along a distant beam. But these minor interruptions only serve to accentuate the gravity of the moment, reminding you that even in worlds brimming with magic, life retains its quiet absurdities. The scent of damp stone and scorched parchment mingles with a faint trace of incense, lingering from protective charms hastily cast by students and faculty alike. A sensory reminder that magic, like morality, is rarely neutral. It reacts, it judges, it records. You follow Pettigrew closely, noting the almost imperceptible tension in his shoulders, the twitching of his hands, the nervous glances over his shoulder. And you realize that his inner turmoil is not only visible but contagious, infecting the very atmosphere with a sense of anticipation, dread, and uncomfortable fascination. Scholars debate whether betrayal is a conscious moral choice or the product of circumstance and opportunity. And as you move through the shadowed halls, you feel the interplay of both, the collision of innate character and external pressure creating a palpable storm around Pettigrew's actions. Fringe magical lore suggests that spaces like Hogwarts can amplify moral tension, subtly influencing decision-making through residual enchantments, sympathetic resonance with past deeds, and the echoes of powerful intentions left by generations of wizards. You almost believe it as you notice how the shadows seem to linger longer around Pettigrew's small frame, how the air feels charged in specific corridors, and how even Scabbers, his tiny familiar, appears tense, whiskers quivering, as if sensing the weight of history pressing down on every step. Each detail, the faint scuff of shoes on stone, the soft sigh of wind through an open window, the distant hum of magical wards, serves as both backdrop and instrument in the unfolding drama, highlighting the intricate choreography of consequence that follows a moment of treachery. The ripple effects of Pettigrew's decision become apparent almost immediately. Subtle shifts in alliances, whispered rumors that spread like wildfire through the wizarding community, and a sudden, almost imperceptible tension in spaces that had previously felt safe. You feel the fragility of trust, like a physical force pressing against the stone walls, the residue of betrayal permeating every corridor, every shadowed nook, and even the faint glimmers of light reflecting off enchanted surfaces. Historical accounts will later describe these events with precise dates and locations, noting the practical consequences of Pettigrew's actions. But you, following him through the silent aftermath, perceive a deeper, more nuanced reality. The emotional weight, the moral ambiguity, and the subtle interplay of fear, guilt, and opportunism that define human and magical behavior. Small moments punctuate this heavy tableau. A candle flickers and dies. A painting shifts its gaze to follow Pettigrew's retreating form, and a faint, almost imperceptible vibration courses through the stones, as if the castle itself is registering the moral shockwave. You observe Pettigrew's interactions with the hidden, almost forgotten elements of Hogwarts. The secret doors, the narrow stairways, the alcoves where spells long past still linger. And each encounter underscores the intricate web of consequences that ripple outward from a single act of betrayal. Fringe historians speculate that some magical constructs in the castle are sensitive to ethical deviation, subtle instruments designed to highlight, monitor, or even punish moral transgressions. And as you watch Pettigrew navigate these spaces, you cannot help but feel that he is being assessed not only by peers or rivals, but by the very environment itself. Every scuff of his shoes, every flick of his hand, every nervous glance contributes to an invisible ledger of choices. And you feel the heavy weight of witnessing history in its unvarnished, immediate form. Messy, morally complex, and deeply affecting. As you follow Pettigrew deeper into the aftermath, you notice how the previously subtle magical effects intensify. Whispers in the air grow slightly louder, shadows cling more persistently to corners, and faint glimmers of light from residual charms shimmer like distant stars against the stone. Each sensory cue heightens your awareness of the interconnectedness of action and consequence, reminding you that betrayal is never an isolated event. It reverberates outward, touching not only the immediate participants, but the fabric of the world around them. You catch a glimpse of a rat-sized cloak fluttering behind Scabbers, a small absurdity that juxtaposes the heavy moral stakes, emphasizing that even in dire circumstances, life contains pockets of whimsy, subtle humor, and human or animal quirks. These details provide a sort of rhythm to the tense narrative, allowing you to breathe, to observe, and to appreciate the richness of the world unfolding before you. The unfolding drama also highlights the intersection of loyalty, fear, and ambition, elements that magical scholars argue are fundamental to understanding ethical behavior. Pettigrew's choices illuminate how these forces can collide, creating moral tension that is both visible and intangible, experienced by all who observe and influenced by the subtle environment of Hogwarts itself. You notice the faint glimmer of protective wards reacting to Pettigrew's movements, the whisper of residual spells shifting in the walls, and the quivering of Scabbers' whiskers. Each detail reinforcing the idea that magic does not exist in isolation. It interacts, reflects, and sometimes amplifies human or wizard emotions, thoughts, and choices. Historians will debate for centuries whether Pettigrew's betrayal was necessary, avoidable, or merely inevitable. But in this moment, As you follow him through the quiet, charged aftermath, you sense the full weight of consequence, the complexity of moral decision-making, and the interplay between character, environment, and circumstance. The chamber where Pettigrew finally pauses is filled with a palpable stillness, a momentary suspension in which time itself seems to hesitate, holding its breath while the consequences of earlier choices unfurl. Shadows cling to every corner, each flicker of torchlight tracing the contours of stone and wood with eerie precision. The faint hum of magical wards resonates in the air like a soft drumbeat, providing rhythm to the otherwise silent tension. And you sense that every heartbeat here matters, that even a minor shift, a stumble, a glance, a whisper, can alter the course of events. You watch Pettigrew's small figure, the tension in his shoulders, the restless movement of his hands, and realize that betrayal is not a singular act, but a process, unfolding gradually, with every micro-decision contributing to the weight of history. Through it all, subtle comedic moments punctuate the intensity. A stray broom falls with a soft clatter. A tiny rat scampers across the floor as though oblivious to the enormity of events. And a candle wavers in its holder, threatening to extinguish but somehow remaining alight. These moments remind you that life, even in a world brimming with magic and moral quandaries, is messy, absurd, and unpredictable, that the universe contains both darkness and levity, and that witnessing history involves engaging with both. You follow Pettigrew as he navigates the last hidden corridors, every step a testament to the intricate interplay of fear, cunning, and moral compromise. And you understand that the aftermath of betrayal is as complex, nuanced, and morally fraught as the act itself, a labyrinth of cause, effect, and human or magical nature that will resonate far beyond this night. As the echoes of Pettigrew's decision settle, you feel the weight of observation pressing on you, a combination of fascination, horror, and reluctant understanding. Shadows resume their positions, faint glimmers of magic dim, and the faint nervous twitch of Scabbers' tail serves as the last punctuation to the moral and magical drama you have witnessed. You realize that betrayal leaves traces not only in history, but in perception, in environment, and in conscience. A subtle yet unerasable imprint on the fabric of both human and magical worlds. The aftermath is not simply consequence. It is reflection, tension, and a persistent whisper of the fragility of trust chasing shadows through the winding halls and hidden corridors of Hogwarts. You find yourself caught in a tense, almost surreal pursuit, trailing Peter Pettigrew as the weight of his betrayal hangs palpably in the air. The castle seems alive, each stone and torch vibrating subtly as though it perceives the moral tension coursing through its walls, shadows stretching and contorting in response to the unsteady rhythm of your footsteps. The scent of damp stone and the faint tang of old magic fills your nose, a sensory reminder that history, both magical and mundane, never truly forgets, recording the faintest tremor of conscience alongside grand acts of heroism and treachery. You notice every minute detail, the soft shuffle of Pettigrew's feet against cold stone, the almost imperceptible twitch of Scabbers' whiskers, the flicker of torchlight reflecting off a glimmering rune etched into the wall centuries ago, and feel the delicate tension between observation and interference pressing against you. Every creak of the floorboards seems amplified, each whisper of wind through narrow cracks in the walls carrying portent, and you begin to sense that even the smallest act, a flick of the hand or a nervous glance, might reverberate far beyond the immediate pursuit. Scholarly debates persist over the influence of magical environments on moral decision-making, with some historians asserting that spaces like Hogwarts subtly manipulate choices through residual enchantments, sympathetic resonance, and echoes of intent. And as you follow Pettigrew, the plausibility of these arguments feels almost undeniable. The castle itself seems to guide, test, and respond to his treacherous path. You move cautiously, aware that the pursuit is not merely physical, but psychological. A tense navigation of fear, memory, and the lingering echoes of friendship broken. The corridors twist and turn in labyrinthine complexity, the interplay of light and shadow creating optical illusions that exaggerate Pettigrew's movements and make each corner feel simultaneously inviting and menacing. Fringe magical lore suggests that certain enchanted creatures, like scabbers, are attuned to moral energy, sensing fear, guilt, and intent in ways that humans cannot. And watching the rat's tiny form scuttle nervously behind Pettigrew, whiskers quivering, you cannot help but consider that this pursuit is as much a confrontation with conscience as it is with a physical figure. You notice the absurdities scattered throughout the scene. A broom balanced precariously on a banister, a floating candle drifting lazily in the air, a faint squeak echoing in a distant corridor that makes you flinch, reminding you that life and magic is rarely entirely solemn. The tension thickens as Pettigrew nears the edge of the castle's hidden chambers, his steps calculated, the faint hum of protective wards vibrating in the walls around you, a constant reminder that magic records, judges, and sometimes reacts to acts of betrayal. Each movement he makes seems amplified, every minor decision carrying outsized consequence, and you feel the eerie sensation that time itself stretches, prolonging each heartbeat, each step, each microsecond of indecision into a suspended tableau of suspense. Shadows cling to every corner, the faint shimmer of old enchantments tracing the path before him, and you realize that the chase is layered. The physical act of pursuit overlays a moral and historical tension that hums invisibly in the stone, resonating with all who witness it. Scholars debate whether Pettigrew's path was inevitable or a series of contingent choices, and fringe tales suggest that certain magical corridors themselves favor particular moral outcomes, subtly nudging their travelers toward specific acts, whether heroic or treacherous. Standing here following him, you cannot dismiss these ideas entirely. Every creak, flicker, and whisper seems conspiratorial, charged with intent. You watch as he navigates the hidden stairways and narrow passages, his small form moving with a careful mixture of desperation and cunning. The air is thick with anticipation, the subtle vibration of residual spells buzzing faintly in your ears, and the shadows seem to stretch longer, almost reaching for him as he passes, a silent commentary on the gravity of his choices. The flickering torches cast grotesque, ever-shifting shapes on the walls, elongating Pettigrew's figure and making him appear both larger and smaller than life, simultaneously vulnerable and dangerous. You note every micro-expression, the tightening of his jaw, the rapid blink of his eyes, the faint twitch of his fingers as they brush against the cold stone, and you feel the tension of these details pressing against your senses, pulling you deeper into the moral and physical complexity of his flight. The castle seems to respond, as if aware of the enormity of the events unfolding. Faint whispers echo through the hallways, as though the walls themselves murmur warnings and reflections, and portraits tilt their painted heads to watch, adding the silent judgment of centuries to the already overwhelming weight of consequence. Small, almost humorous interruptions provide brief relief in the otherwise suffocating tension. A broom shifts slightly, startling scabbers. A candle wobbles and threatens to fall, but remains miraculously alight. And a faint squeak resonates somewhere unseen, a reminder that the world continues in its own rhythm, even amidst betrayal and fear. These tiny absurdities punctuate the narrative, providing breathing space while underscoring the unpredictability of events, the quirks of a magical environment, and the interplay of life, magic, and morality. Every step Pettigrew takes seems calculated, a negotiation with both physical obstacles and ethical weight. And you notice that his awareness of the hidden environment, the faint hum of wards, and the quivering of his familiar imbue his flight with a strange choreography, a dance between survival, guilt, and the lingering ghosts of friendship. As you continue the pursuit, the corridors narrow, walls pressing closer, and you feel the pulse of residual enchantments resonating in the stones, amplifying the tension and emphasizing the moral stakes. Pettigrew's breathing quickens, audible in the stillness, each exhalation punctuating the silent symphony of suspense, while the faintest hints of light from magical runes and flickering torches cast elongated shadows that stretch and contract, adding a visual rhythm to the auditory tension. Fringe legends suggest that certain hidden corridors react to betrayal, subtly influencing the emotional state of those who traverse them. And the perceptible shift in air and light seems to corroborate this notion, a sensory testament to the intricate, layered nature of Hogwarts' magical architecture. Every scuff of shoes, every flicker of light, every faint vibration of a magical ward contributes to a heightened awareness of cause and consequence, of the moral and historical gravity contained within this chase. Finally, Pettigrew pauses at a junction of corridors, the faint glow of protective spells illuminating his anxious, quivering form, and you realize that even as you chase him, you are witnessing the convergence of human frailty, magical influence, and historical consequence. His hesitation is a microcosm of the larger narrative of betrayal, the tension between self-interest and friendship, between fear and morality, between survival and legacy. Shadows cling to the walls like spectators, the faint hum of magic thrumming in response to his indecision, and Scabbers twitches nervously, whiskers brushing against stone, a tiny mirror of his master's inner conflict. Scholars will debate whether Pettigrew's actions were morally predetermined or contingent upon a complex set of factors, and you sense that these debates are not abstract. They are lived, experienced, and observable in every quiver, twitch, and careful step he takes. Each movement, each decision, each subtle glance compounds, creating a tension that reverberates through both physical and moral space, and you feel acutely aware of the weight of observation. History is not only recorded in deeds, but in the act of witnessing, in the attention paid to consequence, and in the subtle alignment of environment, intention, and morality. The chase stretches on, a combination of fear, anticipation, and ethical reflection, and you realize that betrayal, once set in motion, cannot be contained. It ripples outward, touching the stones, the air, the walls, and all who occupy them. Even the faintest sound, the shuffling of a rat, the whisper of a distant portrait, the quiver of a candle flame, serves as a punctuation to the unfolding narrative, reinforcing the inescapable interconnection of magic, morality, and consequence. Pettigrew moves forward, small yet consequential, and you understand in a profound, almost visceral way that the pursuit is as much a journey through ethical complexity as it is through physical space, that each corridor, shadow, and enchanted surface bears witness to the convergence of personal choice, magical influence, and historical resonance, and that the echoes of this chase will reverberate far beyond these hallways, shaping the world in ways subtle, profound, and enduring. The final leg of Peter Pettigrew's journey through Hogwarts feels suspended in a strange, almost surreal tension, the air itself heavy with anticipation, as though the castle has paused to witness the culmination of a series of choices that will resonate far beyond its stone walls. You follow him closely, senses sharpened to the smallest flicker of movement, the subtlest change in shadow, the faintest echo of a heartbeat or scurry of tiny paws. The scent of damp stone and old parchment mingles with lingering traces of protective charms, creating an atmosphere that is at once oppressive and alive, humming with the residual energy of spells cast, promises broken, and secrets kept for decades. You notice every quiver of Pettigrew's hands, every nervous glance, every hesitation that betrays the inner turmoil of a figure caught between fear, survival, and the inexorable pull of self-interest. Understanding that betrayal is never instantaneous, but the product of countless micro-decisions that accumulate until the moment of action is unavoidable. The castle itself seems to respond. Subtle shifts in shadows, the faint hum of protective wards, the quivering of the enchanted torches above, all reflecting the magnitude of the moral tension in the air. Fringe magical lore claims that spaces like Hogwarts are not neutral. They are sentient witnesses, subtly influencing the choices of those who navigate them, amplifying moral stress, and registering the ripples of betrayal. And standing here, you almost believe it. The walls themselves leaning inward, as if to observe and judge. Each corridor, each narrow stairwell, each hidden chamber that Pettigrew passes through seems to pulse with history, the echoes of prior betrayals and heroism, intermingling with the present in a tapestry of consequence. Shadows stretch unnaturally long, flickering and twisting as the torches respond to both his movement and the weight of his choices. You notice small, almost absurd details that underscore the strangeness of the moment. A broom poised improbably against the wall, a discarded parchment fluttering as if alive, a faint squeak of scabbers navigating the stone floor with nervous urgency, whiskers twitching in perfect synchrony with Pettigrew's anxious movements. These minor interruptions provide brief, almost comic relief, a reminder that life, even in the most intense moments, is unpredictable, whimsical, and occasionally absurd, and that magic itself seems to preserve these quirks alongside grand, historical consequences. Every detail contributes to the tension, layering sensory information with moral weight, pulling you into a vortex where observation becomes both responsibility and participation, where witnessing an act of betrayal is almost as consequential as committing it. As Pettigrew moves toward the final chamber that will define his legacy, you sense that the moral tension is no longer subtle. It hangs in the air, a palpable presence pressing against your chest and tightening your breath. Each footstep resonates, amplified by the stone floors, echoing not only through the corridors, but through time itself, as though the walls are recording, reflecting, and responding to the cumulative weight of fear, guilt, and ambition. Historians debate whether Pettigrew's betrayal was a consequence of intrinsic character flaws, external pressures, or the subtle influence of magical environments. And here, witnessing his choices, you sense that it is a combination of all three. A convergence of personality, circumstance, and magical resonance that amplifies the ethical stakes of the moment. Fringe accounts insist that familiar creatures, like scabbers, can sense moral vibration, their movements subtly influenced by shifts in conscience. And you notice that the tiny rat mirrors Pettigrew's tension perfectly, whiskers quivering, tail flicking in quiet alarm, as if even the smallest creatures are participants in this moral drama. The corridor narrows, walls pressing in, and you feel a subtle vibration in the stone beneath your feet, an almost imperceptible rhythm that seems to echo the pulse of Pettigrew's fear, anticipation, and indecision. The castle's protective enchantments hum faintly, a low, almost musical undertone that underscores the significance of the final steps he takes. Every movement is measured, deliberate, and yet tinged with hesitation. Each micro-decision, a delicate negotiation with the moral, magical, and historical forces converging in this single, decisive moment. Shadows cling to corners like silent observers. Torches flicker in response to his presence, and Scabbers navigates the space with tense precision, reminding you that even the smallest participants can have an outsized impact on unfolding events. You recognize that betrayal is not a singular act, but a continuum of choices, each weighted with consequence, each layered with nuance, and that Pettigrew's journey is the embodiment of this principle, a living demonstration of how fear, self-interest, and opportunity intersect to shape history in subtle yet profound ways. The final chamber comes into view, a dimly lit space suffused with the lingering hum of protective wards and the faint aroma of aged parchment and smoldering herbs. Pettigrew pauses, breathing quick and shallow, eyes darting between exits, shadows, and the familiar rat clinging to his side. Every decision he has made, every micro-choice, every hesitation has led him to this point, where the consequences of betrayal will crystallize, ripple outward, and echo through the wizarding world. The faint flicker of magical light illuminates the rune-inscribed walls, the intricate interplay of enchantments, history, and moral resonance pressing in on all sides. A tangible reminder that even in a world of magic, ethical choice carries weight and consequence. You notice Pettigrew's hesitation, the subtle tightening of his jaw, the nervous twitch of fingers brushing against cold stone, and you realize that this is not merely a physical moment, but a moral crucible, a test of character and consequence. Every heartbeat resonates against the stone. Every flicker of torchlight highlights both fear and determination, and the faint movement of Scabbers echoes the tension in perfect microcosm. The chamber seems to breathe with anticipation, walls responding to intent, magic subtly amplifying moral conflict, and you sense that this moment will be debated by scholars for centuries. Was it cowardice, self-preservation, or inevitability that dictated Pettigrew's actions? Fringe accounts add layers of interpretation, suggesting that residual magical energies in the chamber subtly guided his moral compass, enhancing fear and hesitancy, heightening the stakes, and leaving subtle traces for observant historians and future magical ethicists to interpret. Finally, the act of betrayal is consummated, subtle in execution, yet seismic in consequence. The echoes reverberate through stone, air, and conscience alike. Shadows elongate in response, and the faint hum of enchantments rises and falls like a sigh, registering the culmination of fear, self-interest, and moral compromise. You feel the weight of observation, the responsibility of witnessing history, as the consequences unfold outward, touching unseen corners of the castle, the wizarding world, and the moral fabric of all who are aware of this act. Pettigrew's choice is irrevocable. His small, trembling form embodies the complexity of human and magical morality, a nexus where history, consequence, and magical influence converge. As the immediate tension dissipates, the castle returns to its quieter rhythm, shadows settling, enchantments dimming, and Scabbers' whiskers twitching in subdued anxiety. You recognize the profound lesson embedded in the chase, the betrayal, and the aftermath. Even the smallest act, performed by the least conspicuous of figures, can ripple outward, shaping both history and morality in ways that are subtle, far-reaching, and impossible to erase. The chamber, corridor, and castle walls retain the echoes of choice, of fear, and of moral ambiguity, a living testament to the weight of consequence and the enduring complexity of loyalty, survival, and the human or magical condition. In the quiet aftermath, you take a breath, letting the sensory weight of stone, shadows, scent, and residual magic settle, reflecting on the intricate interwoven tapestry of fear, loyalty, and consequence you have witnessed. Shadows soften, torches glow steadily, and Scabbers curls quietly at Pettigrew's feet, the world seeming to exhale with you. The lesson is subtle yet enduring. Betrayal, fear, and moral complexity leave traces not only in history, but in observation, environment, and conscience, lingering long after the events themselves have passed, shaping perception, choice, and ethical reflection across time and space.